right, it is 6:40, and we don't have a quorum to open the board meeting, but we do have a hearing for the budget, so I'd like to get that underway. So I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Kenter. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, President Carl, members of the board, members of the community, fellow administrators. My name is Dr. Philip Kenter, business official here at Sag Harbor, and I am presenting budget presentation number 3, entitled Transportation, Revenue, Maximum Tax Levy, Fund Balances, and this is our workshop. So, I'd like to start with our transportation budget. We have some bulleted items here, where we're looking at the purchase of 1 new bus from our fleet reserve, sustaining shared services, for the board to consider approval to increase the fleet replacement fund, and overall we're looking at an increase in the transportation budget of 7.96% over last year, which includes the purchase of the new bus.
So we've come back to what Chris had suggested last year, where we have bullet up that kind of just give a
Big picture.
big picture before he gets into the weeds of the budget itself. So Dr. Kenner was nice enough to just give us a synopsis of the transportation, big rocks.
Thank you.
Great, no problem. So with our district transportation, this first slide is entitled District Non-Educational Salaries. You'll see that this budget went up slightly from last year, and that's due to the settlement of the contract, and some back pay was owed to the bus drivers, including the implementation of their new schedule. This slide talks about the list of the new bus routes that we've implemented for this year. The Port Jeff Academic Center, BOCES, was added in January. The new routes for the Sagaponack Common School District contract were added in September of 2018. And we've added a new route to the Bellport Tech Center in September for the transportation of 2 students. This next slide brings us into the contractual obligations, and you'll see that it went up just slightly, about $4,000. Most of that, $2,000 for next year's budget is for the transportation of 1 homeless student. We're estimating that cost to be $2,000. With reference to transportation insurance, supplies, those budgets are projected at remaining flat for next year. For fuel and gasoline, we built in a 2% increase. For equipment, that line is flat. For contractual transportation, we brought that line up 2%. Field trips, we estimated that line to increase by 2%. For field trips, we're estimating that to be slightly lower than 2. We're estimating a 1.8% increase there. And for interscholastic athletics, we're estimating a 2% increase there. For purchase of buses, you'll note that in this year's current budget, we took possession of a brand new minibus in October of 2018, and that bus was $52,715. We're proposing to purchase a new 2019 school bus for the cost of $103,524, and that would come out of our fleet reserve fund. And this is a list of our entire fleet of buses. I wanted to point out the bus that we're looking to replace with the new 2019 bus is bus number 2. You'll see with the mileage as of January 31st, it has over 200,000 miles on it. However, we're not looking to actually get rid of that bus. It's still in decent shape. We're going to keep it as a reserve bus. So when one bus is out of service for repairs, we'll be able to have that bus to replace and back it up.
Let's hold the question.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
In speaking with Sagaponack School District, they may request in the negotiations for 2019-20 in their contract a request for a brand new 4x4 Chevy Suburban to access certain roads and driveways for student pickups. However, I put that on the table, but that contract has not yet been negotiated. And just a quick blurb here about our transportation fleet replacement program. It was created in 2010 so that we can self-finance the replacement of our Sag Harbor fleet of buses. And that money comes from end of the budget year surplus funds or specified budget appropriations. Right now, that fund has an actual balance of $2,003,539, which includes interest. It is maximized out, so if the board is looking to increase that particular fund, the board would have to ask for a public vote on that in May. So, as a summary to the transportation budget, we're looking under the salary line. There's an increase of $47,421, which is contractual. For non-salary line, we have an increase of $58,056, which is for the purchase, primarily the purchase of the new bus. Other supplies, gasoline, and the homeless student transportation, that line is increasing $8,683. The total increase to the transportation department's budget for next year is $114,160, which includes the purchase of the new bus. That is a 7.96% increase.
All right, so before we move into the next section of the presentation, I'll just see if the board has any questions. Go ahead.
I had a few questions.
Yeah.
So when you were saying that if that fund is maxed out, what does that mean?
It had an authorized amount of $2 million to be put into it, and that's been
Okay.
earning interest, so.
So if we want to earn more interest on it, we need to do something?
No, we just can't cognizantly put more money into it from what's left over out of the previous year's budget. So we would have to,
Okay.
we would either have to create a new fund or vote and get voter approval to increase the amount of that.
Okay, but that's not where we're buying a new bus, right? It's not like we feel like we have too much money, so we should go buy a new bus.
No, that bus that's being replaced, it's scheduled to be taken, not totally out of service, but as a daily runner, because it's got over 200,000 miles on it. So we're gonna keep it and keep it in reserve.
Is it not working?
No, it works.
I mean, are we?
We had a lot of work done on it, repair work, a lot of maintenance. So
No, they
that
just
bus is 10
sound-
years old.
They just sound expensive to me. I would just question why we're just gonna buy a new one unless the one that we have isn't working.
Well, that particular bus has had a lot of repairs to it, and so we figured if we buy the new bus, we'll keep that one as a reserve bus. 'Cause right now, when we have a bus that goes into the shop for repair, we don't have a replacement bus for it, we're down. So we
But is that, and I'm sorry to interrupt, is that something that's happening where buses are breaking down?
The older buses they're in the shop more and more,
It's 10 years old,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And also it's a wheelchair bus, so you don't wanna have 2 wheelchair buses go down, because it's not just for children in wheelchairs, but if you
Okay.
get a child that breaks their leg or something like that. And another important point is when we set up these contracts with Wayne Scott and now Sagaponic, the thought behind it was, we wanted to get to a sustainable point where we'd never have to ask our taxpayers to fund bus purchases again. That was our long-range plan. And so to increase the threshold on the fleet reserve would be smart, because we now have the Wayne Scott contract. If Sagaponic re-ups, we'll always wind up with funds from those, so that can continue to go into that reserve, so we never have to go to the taxpayers. So in this case, we're not going to the taxpayers. We're taking that out of fleet reserve.
And that's the request as well, is that you wanna increase that reserve?
It's on the table for the board to maybe.
I mean, $2 million, that sounds like a lot of money.
So you want to constantly, so our long-term goal when we started this was, and this was with your previous business administrator, is that sustainability-wise, from these 2 contracts that we have, to continue to put, it's not a lot, but small buckets in every year. We're not making exorbitant amounts on these, that's why they cut the contracts with us. But 2 reasons we did the contracts was, number 1, they could provide, Wayne Scott and Sagaponic could provide choice to their parents. So to the parents, do you wanna go to East Hampton or do you wanna go to Sag Harbor? But that was going to increase their transportation costs substantially. This way, we provide the transportation at a lower threshold, but that means we need more buses to make that available to them. And it puts more wear and tear on our buses.
Like the minibus that we bought this year in October, so that enabled us to take the old Ford van out of service. That's the vehicle that we're turning into our food service truck right now. That was that passenger van. So that, we're keeping that, but that's now assigned to the food department.
So with who pays for the transportation for the Sagaponic and Waynescott students? We do?
They
They
pay
pay.
us,
Okay.
and then we have a margin of.
So we have our own fleet, but then they pay a price
They
per
pay.
head.
Yeah,
I actually have a slide I'm gonna show you in the revenue, showing you the income on that.
Okay,
So
and
what-
so the idea with the Suburban is we buy it, but then they pay,
right, and then we would mark that into their contract.
and we need that because, like, why? I don't-
Want me to
The
start
kids
again?
don't wanna walk
No,
down
no,
the
the
driveway?
Suburban
or-
one.
Oh,
The
so the
Suburban's different.
Suburban, so they've got some narrower, estates, shall we say? That it's just a longer distance, so there's some bigger estates there, so that to get to those children. So, you know, we don't wanna wind up with flooding and that kind of thing to be able to not get to those children, so that's one of the things they wanted to put on the table. So we only have a 1-year contract with them. I'd like to continue those contracts with them, but we haven't negotiated that yet.
But this is to get in, I'm sorry to be belaboring this, but it's to get in these driveways, or I'm trying to understand where we're not gonna be able to get.
So I think part of the backstory is that previously they had door-to-door pickup, and now our buses can't go down these long,
Buses can't pack.
like all the way up to the
There.
front door, but it's not like a front door like my front door where it's right next to the
Yeah.
road. It's like this long,
Yeah,
like,
But our kids don't get door-to-door pickup.
no.
it's a different district. But we're not going to break the law. We're going to follow the law, so.
Which is what?
That our buses can't go down their driveway.
And we can't back a bus up. Buses don't back up. You just don't back a school bus up. But you can, so the Suburban can make that turn. And Suburbans, I gotta tell you, having been from an upstate district where you get weather, it's always good to have a 4x4 in case you have flooding and that kind of thing. That's a wonderful thing to have in your fleet. That's a
Well, I
great thing.
get the relationship is great and the revenue stream, I get that part of it, but it just seems like we're gonna buy a car so that their kids are gonna get better
And
pickup
but
service than
it
our
becomes
kids.
part of our fleet as well. They're a little tiny district.
But I think all that's like up for discussion, right?
Okay.
He's just presenting it like.
Listen, I'm just staying transparent.
Okay,
Uh,
appreciate it.
But, because
Not a
we
done.
supply that transportation, their children have choice. And because they have choice, you may wanna look at that revenue line of what's tuitioning in. And the other part is when a school district tuitions into us, they pick up all the special education costs, they pay fully for their child.
Yeah.
Other than a parent, if a parent tuitions in and there's additional costs, we can't charge them back for that, but we can a school district.
But they wanna come here anyway, cause we're the best, right?
Right, but when a district does it, it's really to your benefit, because if there's speech or, you know, they have to have adaptive PE, that kind of thing, the district will fund those items. Whereas a private paid parent, you can't, because that comes across as if you're discriminating. So,
I'd like to show you the revenue slide shortly, and then that might help you
Okay.
in your deliberations.
Okay,
So the second half of tonight's presentation is entitled, again, bullet points, our revenues, fund balances, the maximum tax cap calculation that we just performed last week, tax rates, and the schedule for upcoming presentations, as well as the tuition income. So for tuition income, the parentally placed tuition, we had been looking at that, and we know that here in 1819, the contracts that we currently have with parents, our income through June 30th of this year will be $406,227. And we are very conservatively projecting that for 2019-20 as well. And for Sagaponic's tuition, We've got contracts for 193,889, and again, conservatively, I've slid that over to 2019-20. And for Wainscott's tuition, 2018-19, we have contracts for 382,491, which I've also moved over to 2019-20. Amagansett tuition, 51,254, and I've moved that over to 2019-20, also conservatively. You will recall that last year's conservative estimates for tuition income, we had estimated and budgeted for $724,511. We are realizing $1,033,861 in confirmed signed contracts, which again I've moved over to 2019, 2020. So you can see the delta between the 724 and the 1033. We're already ahead by over $300,000 than what we estimated when I presented last year. What we're charging for shared services with
Can we go back,
transportation.
Stinny, and just get a little happy moment there? $1 million worth of children tuition.
It's
charged.
great, I'm not questioning
Well,
that.
I think you're going to like this slide as well, because in 2018-19, you'll recall when I presented last year, we were looking at transportation income at $247,500. And we're realizing for 2019-20, based on contractual, $415,416. That's a delta of $167,916 more than what we thought. And these are revenue generated from these agreements. They're helping us to sustain our current educational programs, and they're giving us the mechanism to offset increases in these transportation costs, which would include the possibility of purchasing that vehicle that Superintendent Graves was talking about. This particular slide, and I needed to take a moment to explain this. It's a slide you've seen in past years, and it is our estimate of budget revenue for 2019-20. And though we don't have confirmation, but as of last week, the numbers that we tentatively received as estimates from the governor's office, looking that when you add up all the state aid that we should be entitled to, we're looking at $1,981,717. When you add in pilots, which are payments in lieu of taxes, that would be PSEG and Cablevision lines that run through our district, either above or underground. Last year we earned $150,000. We already know that based on income, it went up slightly to 157. Now that previous slide, I just want to walk you back. You'll see non-resident tuition, $1,033,861. Just want to walk back. There it is again, the $1,033,861 with all the tuition. Now let me walk forward two slides. There it is under non-resident tuition, $1,033,861. That's what we've got built in for next year. Charges for shared services and facilities, $415,416. Okay, walking back again. There's the number, budget 2019-20, $415,416. There it is. For grants, interest on our investments, miscellaneous revenue, we're looking at a conservative number of $117,056. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you the maximum tax cap calculation that we arrived at last week. But that number came in at $39,274,676. And I've not built in anything yet for ERS reserve or taking any other money out of our reserves because we're still structuring the budget. You may recall also, I wanted to bring to the board's attention, I made this presentation March 22nd of last year, and tonight's February the 11th. So last year's presentation was made later in the season, so I don't have all the budgetary numbers yet from all the departments. So that's why I'm leaving to be determined in those last three categories. But we know right now that based on state aid, based on income from tuition and busing, and the tax levy maximum calculation, that we're looking at $39,274,676. That's $1,713,536 over our current year, which is a 4.09% increase. And the tax levy limit that we're entitled to, that I just filed with the state on Friday, based on our tax cap calculation for maximum, is 4.5620, or 4.56%. And I'm going to, I'll explain that slide in more detail in the next slide. This slide, of which each of you received a copy of, is a list of all of our fund balances and reserves as of June 30th, which is when we were audited as of. So these are confirmed numbers. What we have in each category for what's called assigned and reserved, unreserved, and undesignated. And for the benefit of the community, you'll often hear that we have unassigned fund balance limited up to 4%. We're allowed to put up to 4% of our budget, our total budget, as a savings account, if you will, if the money is left over from the previous year. So that is that account, $1,675,000. And then we have other accounts that we're not really able to touch except for that specific purpose, unless either voter approval, such as the capital reserve, or public referendum, such as the repair reserve, or by board vote and resolution, such as the unemployment reserve, the insurance reserve, and the workers' comp reserve. Now, this is the worksheet which walks you through how we calculated the tax levy limit for 2019-20. And it starts off taking our current tax levy for the current 2018-19 year, which is through June 30th of this year. We multiply that by our school district's tax base growth factor. Every school district is issued a growth factor, and it's based on new construction and renovations within that school district. And I'm happy to report that ours is the second highest in Suffolk County at 1.0209%. So that factor is multiplied to produce a subtotal. Then we add in the pilot amount that we got for this year. We take out the capital levy, which was our capital debt for the current year, and we get a net total. We multiply that by the 2% CPI, which the state has indicated is the number we should use, even though the actual inflation rate is 2.44%, the state allows us to go up to 2%. We subtract out the pilots we anticipate receiving in 1920, which is $157,000, as well as our capital expenditures. And when you take the delta or the difference, our tax levy went up by $1,713,536, which is a 4.5620% increase, which, let me walk back 2 slides, is right there. Now, this is the most amount of money the board can levy our community, our district. The board has options. You can go to that amount or a lesser amount. You may recall some of the scenarios that we looked at last year. But this is the most amount that we can charge as a tax levy for the Sag Harbor School District. We are in 2 towns, the town of East Hampton and the town of Southampton. And each town has its own equalization rate, which is the state's, New York State's measure of a municipality's level of assessment. And that is the ratio of the total assessed value to the market value. And in the town of Southampton, every property is assessed at 100%. And in the town of East Hampton, for this year, each property is assessed at a 58% equalization rate. So what does that mean? I put a sample chart together to show in theory what that means if you were to take $1 million home in East Hampton and that same $1 million home in Southampton, and you apply the rate of 58% and 100% respectively, and then you put in the rate per thousand of assessed value. When you look at the percentage, the annual impact in dollars for East Hampton that home would go up in tax levy by $232.44 in East Hampton and $210.60 in Southampton. So in East Hampton, it would be a monthly increase of $19.37, and in Southampton, an increase of $17.55. Again, that's based on the equalization rate. And that assumes that the assessed values remain the same. This final slide shows our budget calendar. We'll be back next month, a month from today, March 11th, where I'll be presenting the tax levy limit again, the tax levy impact. We'll also talk about athletics and special education. And I want to thank the board very much for your time and consideration. It's truly a pleasure to serve you.
Questions from the board?
Yeah, I had a question. Just trying to understand, what is it that we're the second highest in Suffolk County?
Our growth factor.
And how is that calculated?
So that's based on how much new construction and permitted renovation work is being done in Sag Harbor School District.
Okay, and the net of that is it allows us to spend more money? Is that what?
It allows us to perform a calculation that increases our tax levy, our maximum.
Okay, but we don't have
tax
to
levy.
do that, right? It's just, yeah, okay.
Any other questions?
I have two questions. One is that we still haven't heard the final report from the transportation consultants, and I know this was the transportation budget. Are we gonna get that in time so that we can understand what impact might happen on what the suggested plan could be for next
I
year?
need to defer that question to the superintendent.
Because it would seem like we would wanna hear that before we would have any final
That's scheduled
evaluation.
for the next
Well,
year.
this budget
And
that I've
this is
structured, this is
draft.
based on costs we estimate will be incurred between the union bus drivers and contractual and the obligations such as fuel and repairs. All that was in tonight's presentation.
Right, but
So-
we have no idea what we're gonna hear from the consultants, and what we hear might impact what our transportation plans could be for next year. That's the only reason why I'm asking. So my assumption is that we may hear things that may change things, and this is just draft, but I didn't know if you had seen something already and that was somehow,
Right now, I
Hold on.
structured next year's budget based on how we operate today.
okay, so it's nothing to do with what the consultants have been working on for months and
No.
what their recommendations might be?
No, I'm basing,
Okay.
based on our operation today, what I project it to be next year.
Okay, great. And then from a process standpoint, there was one other slide, and I'm sorry, I got held up at work, but there was a slide in here about that Sagaponic may want us to get some different type of vehicle to drive down driveways.
That's correct.
Do we have that,
Superintendent
do we
Graves,
have that, did you explain that already? Because if you did, I can just,
yes.
okay, then never mind, then I'll watch the
Superintendent Graves explained the
Okay.
need for that.
And
the
it's
right-
still, it's gonna be through contract negotiations.
Because I can't imagine we would offer that to some of the students being transported and not others. I mean, you know, we don't offer that service to students that live in the
It's
district. We
strictly-
don't go down their driveways and
it's-
pick them up,
It's
so.
strictly a proposal for the board's consideration,
Right.
that we wanted to at least throw it out there and let you be aware of it.
And it's an entirely different district, and, you know, it's a different Board of Education. It's a service that we provide to a different district.
Right,
So
no.
what their needs and wants are, from one school district to another, are entirely different. But one of the benefits we have, as you see, we have $1 million worth of revenue that's been generated because they're able to offer choice to their students or their families to go, do you wanna go to East Hampton, do you wanna go to Sag Harbor? But part of that makes it easier, at least for Wayne-Scott, was Wayne-Scott could do it because we provided their transportation for them.
Absolutely.
Sagaponic developed that without that, but then they saw that it was working really well for Wayne-Scott and said, we're gonna try this for 1 year.
Mhm.
So we do not have a contract with them for next year, but they said if we did, this having a different vehicle might work. Maud knows the ins and outs of that, I don't, I'm not that
What
granular.
does East Hampton offer this to them?
What?
Picking them up at
No,
the door?
we have a contract, they got rid of their private company that did their transportation for them, and they contracted with us. So we are now doing the ultimate shared service.
But East
Sag
Hampton
Harbor.
never drove down their driveway and picked up their children.
They had a
To answer
private,
your question.
they had a
Yeah.
private company
Right.
that did that.
Right.
They had a private company that was doing our contracting. So we have a 1 year and it's revenue producing for us. Sag
No,
Harbor doesn't do this
part
for
of it's
free.
great, I'm just trying to understand, it sounds like we're competing to a certain extent with East Hampton for these revenue generating students from Sagaponic and Waynescott.
No, please don't ever think that, East Hampton, if you hear that, no. Because East Hampton's a wonderful school district, Sag Harbor's a wonderful school district, Sagaponic just wanted to give the opportunity of choice to their families, because some of them
Okay.
live so close to us, because East Hampton's a wonderful school district. What we did is they had a private company doing their transportation, and we could do it for
Sagaponic and Waynescott have that,
had private companies doing their transporting.
okay,
And so we said, we saw how we could generate some revenue for our district by picking up that as a shared service. So as a shared service,
so
we
these
said-
are these are kids who are already gonna come here, rather than them using their private service, we're gonna pick them up and charge them for it.
Yes.
Okay.
So
It's
we-
separate from tuition.
Yeah, so
It's
this is
totally
separate.
unrelated to the $1
So-
million in tuition. They're not linked in terms of issues.
So we generate revenue for the district by picking up their,
Okay,
and in the past, you weren't allowed to do that. But when our governor said, figure out how to do more shared services, we said, okay, we'll figure out how to
But-
do that.
is there a concern that if we don't get the suburban, we're gonna lose those kids? Is
I
that-
haven't gotten into those contract negotiations.
Okay.
It just came up there's one superintendent talking to another, said, this is something, could you consider? I said, I'm gonna tell my board that that's a consideration that you're thinking about. I personally have always wanted a suburban because I grew up, every school district in upstate New York has a suburban because 4x4s are important to have in your wheelhouse because weather happens, and if you have to get kids home, having a suburban's always a good thing. Or, if you have to go someplace, it's not bad to have a 4x4.
But the $1 million you referenced, that was tuition, correct?
And we also have revenue from.
Right, from
yeah.
transportation, but I just want to be clear that the $1 million you referenced is tuition, which is a completely separate thing than transportation. They used to, as part of their choice with East Hampton, they outsourced to a third party. So the transportation and tuition are somewhat parallel but not linked issues. So I don't want to confuse the public thinking that transportation is a $1 million opportunity. It's the tuition that is, transportation is separate, and this is an issue about the transportation.
Well, they were linked for Waynescott.
Right, but we're talking about Sagaponic though.
But when we did Waynescott, it was
Right.
because it would cost them so much to transport to East Hampton and to Sag Harbor.
Right.
That was gonna be expensive for them. So they
Right.
said, if you can combine those two things, we can transport. 'Cause-
Right, but I'm talking about with Sagaponic, the $1 million is tuition, transportation is separate. Just talking about Sagaponic, just for clarity, because I think it was confusing.
Well, the million is both, right, isn't it, Sagaponic and Waynescott?
And we have parents that private pay.
Actually.
We have, it's all, if you wanna pull up that
It's
slide.
it's chart 17.
I think it's a really great thing. I
Yeah,
think
this
it
is,
shows.
tuition alone is,
When you add up
A million.
the 4 areas of tuition, they
Parallel.
total
Entire-
$1,033,861.
Yeah.
that's a
That's,
mistake.
so that's tuition. If you go to chart 18,
So it went from 700 and some to $1 million.
Right,
and chart
I'm
18
just
will
gonna
show
go
you
ahead and be happy about
transportation, we're
that.
going from 279 to 415.
I mean, do you wanna delve in on this tonight, or was the suburban issue, or was
No,
this-
I don't, that's as much as I know. I
Okay.
haven't,
I think until those contracts are for negotiation, we're in those negotiations.
and we don't even have a
I think.
quorum right now,
Yeah.
so I'd wait
Okay.
till we.
This
have
And I-
request
more
just
people.
came
And I
in.
have to
Okay,
talk to our
fine.
head of bus about the grant, I don't spend, actually, Phil's the our head of bus, and I don't know. It was a conversation between two superintendents who said,
Okay.
if you're doing this, you might wanna give your board a heads up, so.
Yeah, we found this out last week, and we just wanted to let you be aware of it tonight.
And then
Public
my,
ask questions?
In just 1 minute. Go ahead.
my other question was, and I think to allude to what Alex brought up about the percentage, obviously the legal amount that we are able to go to may not be the amount we choose to go to.
That's correct.
So from a process perspective, do we want to have that conversation after we've seen all of the presentations? Or early on, so that we don't see presentations that go to the max and we say, we're uncomfortable with that, we don't want to go above 3 or 3.5, show us those scenarios.
Right, so I had mentioned before you got here, Ms. Tice, that this whole presentation Last year was made on March 22nd, and so we're kind of ahead of the game here. I don't have all of the costs yet for all the departments. I'm still working with the principals, athletics, special ed. So I don't have all of our costs defined. So I do know that this is our maximum tax levy that the board is authorized to ask the community for. And it was important for you to see this number tonight. Now, it was my intention as we build the rest of the budget to provide those scenarios to you next month at the March 11th meeting. And actually, that's what's on the calendar to do that. And I know last year I showed you, I think it was 4 scenarios. I'd be prepared to show you 4 next month as well.
Because one of the things that might be interesting to see is, right now, under the maximum amount, you're showing the taxes going up a certain level. I'd love to know how much we can go up where taxes stay flat. Because we're in a scenario where homeowners now can't get the same tax write-offs for their property taxes that they used to. So while these may look like incremental, our average homeowner has had a very steep hit to their pocketbook in the past year or 2. So just, I would ask that one of them shows, no tax increase, that it would still be a tax levy increase, obviously, because the tax increase of 200 on $1 million is not as much as we've seen in some other years. But, I would lobby to have at least one to that so we can consider what that looks like.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that, as well as, I know the village just whacked a lot of people with huge increases. And so I just think we shouldn't go into this just assuming, wow, this is great. We can
Right. Well,
do
this is
4.5%.
yeah, and you're right.
Instead,
So
focus, if I could just finish, if we could try to focus on, because I think even without an increase, people are getting hit with, as Chris was saying, not being able to get deductions, and I think that, I know at least in the town of Southampton and the village, there have been big increases in appraised values of property, so people are already getting hit pretty hard with property tax increases.
Right, so, I understand. And I figured, let me at least show you what the max is that we're entitled to, and then I'll present some scenarios to you next month and let you see, and then if you feel that I need to create more, I can. But I'll come back with 4 or even 5 scenarios for the board to consider. And we can look at those, and I can take it from the low end to the high end, and we could talk about how that could possibly impact us for the future.
Yeah, I mean, a 0 would be a great thing to look at, too, if that's possible.
You mean flat 2%?
Why not 0? Like, why does it have to be? At least as an option to consider.
And then part of that conversation would be, so then what out of the budget gets cut, because there's increases in every line item,
Yeah.
and so at least a 2% increase in every line item, sometimes more, so that's totally fine, and then the next conversation is, so if it's coming up here and we're trying to keep it at 0, it's gotta come out of somewhere else, so which programs do we cut?
Right, because our contractual obligations are about 2% in certain categories, but I just hope that at the end of this process, we see increased investments in educational programs and what directly impacts the children. I hope it's not just non-educational stuff, because I feel like as a district, we've spent an increased amount of money in non-classroom, non-educational programs over the past few years, and I hate to have the pendulum swing too much away from.
Can you just tell us what you're talking about right now?
Well, just in the budgets we've seen so far, some of them have increases above a 2%, let's say, or 2.5%. And we already have our contractual, which are gonna get higher. So I just, I hope when we sit down with, and listen to our elementary, middle, and high school, that we hear about some innovative new investments we're making in our educational program, and that's just not business as usual, and we're adding more investments in non-classroom related activity.
Any other questions from the board?
The only other consideration to think about that I'll throw out, and I mentioned it last year, some of the increases that are imposed on us are unfunded mandates from the state. One that we just learned of, the district clerk and I learned of last week, is that everything, all the documentation that we start to structure that goes on the website, that gets published, whether it be in the form with the tax, the whole tax levy and the tax vote, everything's got to be bilingual. That cost has to be incurred by the district. But also, we've been seeing anywhere from 10 to 12% increases in health insurance each year. You were mentioning about support programs. Probably 80% of our budget is related to the instructional, well, and all the staff here, salaries and benefits, and that's probably 80% of your budget. And so when we're told by, for example, the teacher retirement system next year is going up by 8.86% or something, that's way, way above 2%. So we just have to keep that in mind, that balance that we're trying to keep. If you'll notice in these last three presentations, try to keep as many things flat as we can, and then the things that we speak to our vendors about and we implore upon them, please don't go beyond 2%, because we know that we're gonna be offset by the health insurance, the retirement system. So the money we're saving there, we're gonna be spending there, and we're trying to keep the boat as even as we possibly can. So I just put that out for consideration.
You know, based on that, we used to, at the end of the presentation, it was a pie chart that showed what percentage was towards everything. It might be interesting somehow at the end of this just to see the trends of
Yeah,
like,
we will,
over
once
the
we
last
have
several years.
everything in.
Yeah, and to show like, you know, what it was like 5 years ago and how it's trended.
Any other questions from the board? All right, questions from the public?
Yeah, I have one. You spent, through the regular budget, you spent over 265,000 on buses in 17-18. You're spending over 52,000 out of your budget this year. You're proposing to spend over 103,000 out of your budget next year, and you have over 2 million in your fleet reserve. What is your reasoning for thinking that you need to increase that reserve number?
I'll take that. We do have, when you saw the revenue generating that's coming in from Wayne Scott and from Sagaponic, our goal was after we get done paying for the bus drivers and those buses, so we did purchase buses so we could make that happen, is any gap we had, we didn't want that going into the general fund at the end of the year. We wanted that going to a transportation fleet fund, thinking really long-term. Really, not this year, not next year, but to take us through the long haul, so that we never, ever have to go out to the taxpayers. Long after I'm gone, you know, long after probably this current board's gone, is that the taxpayers from this shared services that we're doing, is that potentially if that had to grow, like we had to pick up other school districts and continue to bring in revenue, that would be your sustainability for never having to go back to the taxpayers ever for buses. Because buses is a really heavy lift. It's a really heavy lift for school districts to
And
go out
what
to.
do you think the ideal amount of the reserve should be?
Well, our fleet is old. I think it should go up incrementally to see which way how we're tacking. But we've got a few of those buses. We've got like the 2009, 2010s. I almost think it's a third of the bus fleet.
Yep.
Is almost 10 years old.
Yeah, and look at the mileage, that's the other issue. And in talking with our transportation supervisor, those buses that are way up on the top end, I know it, I see it all the time, they're constantly out of service, going in the shop, replace an engine, replace a transmission, major work on these buses. And that's why in particular I was talking tonight about bus 2. I happen to know that bus is constantly in the shop for repair, and the repairs are very expensive. So if we wind up purchasing this new bus, we're gonna keep bus 2, because right now it's running. We'll keep it in reserve, and if one of the other buses goes down, that will be our reserve bus to put into action. But you can see the fleet's getting old, and a new bus with a 4-camera system and all the amenities and safety features that it has to have, a full-size bus is coming in about $304,000. The mini buses are coming in around $58,000 to $60,000 in that range.
So another thing, and I think this is what you'll hear from the transportation consultant, is their recommendation is not to hold on to older buses, because New York State Department of Education, the transportation, if you lose brakes on the left side of a bus and they have to be repaired, you have to do the buses on the right side. Whatever happens on this side of the bus has to happen on that side of the bus. Whether or not they need to be fixed, you have to do it. So repairing it's doubles on every single. So the recommendation I think we're gonna hear is to start getting rid of some of that older fleet because of it's almost non-sustainable, the repair of older buses. They're built for the duration, but when it comes to fixing them, just because of the way our New York State education transportation laws are built, if a light goes out on this side, the light on that side still has to be fixed. It's just how it's built. So, again, I think that this shared busing is a really smart idea, and it's a way to continue to have revenue coming in, because again, we can't keep going out to the taxpayers. We've got to come up with other ways to bring in revenue for the school district, and shared services is a great way. We just need a garage mahal to go with it.
Any other questions from the public?
I'm not understanding something. On the first page of page 2, it has purchased 1 new bus from Fleet Reserve. And then if you go to page 10, you have a new bus at 103 coming out of district transportation.
It's how we pay for it, so the
You're
money,
gonna take money out of the fleet and put it into there.
exactly.
Okay, and when was the last time that we touched the transportation fund?
It's this year for the $57,000 or $52,000 purchase of the new minibus that we took delivery of in October.
So what we're saying is that we've been able to use money out of the general fund the entire time, and we haven't touched the fund that we created in 2010 at all until this year.
That's correct.
So for me as a voter, I don't see a reason to increase it. If you haven't used something, you don't need to increase it. That's number 1. And then number 2, are the numbers down that I'm seeing for tuition to students for the high school? On page 17, so there's really only 2 parentally placed tuition students in 7 through 12?
Those are the current contracts we have in place, yes.
I believe that possibly is down. I think, I don't know for sure. Okay, and then, again, I want to just echo what Alex said about the Chevy Suburban, or whatever they're talking about. We just bought a passenger bus that can very easily back up and go down someone's driveway. I don't believe we need to spend money on that, and I also believe that we need to be conservative this year, fiscally conservative. The taxpayers should be very generous to the district.
Do you have a question, Ms. Kroll?
No, I'm giving my opinion now. So I'm attending a workshop, so that's what it is, right, a workshop? Yeah, okay, great.
New York State Department of Education Transportation recommends buses don't back up. That's just their
A
recommendation.
large bus, correct, yes.
Buses are not supposed to back up because they don't have the visibility to back up. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions from the public? All right, so at this time, we'll take a short break, and then we will open up the board meeting. Scott. All right, I would like to call the business meeting to order at this point.
So moved?
Can I go this over?
Second.
Thank you. You all need to vote yes.
On everything, otherwise nothing passes.
Tight margin.
Everybody's
All
out
right.
of power tonight.
When you're ready, we'll stand for the pledge.
Brian, did you vote? Did you vote?
Didn't pop up.
Vote yes?
Didn't pop up.
You want to tell me what you
Yes. Yes.
Aye.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public input 1. Anybody for public input 1?
Yes.
Come on up.
Do you need to tell me?
The rules are posted.
Hi, Sandy Kroll. We are now going into our 3rd marking period. This will be my 3rd time coming to the Board of Education. You're in budget season. I have formally requested not once but twice, now my 3rd time, to have a discussion about the academic support, teachers coaching, leaving, students not having adequate support in that subject. There's been some talk that possibly it wasn't an issue. I find it to be an issue in the fall when they have to leave the premise, not so much in the winter because all sports take part in a gym. And we are approaching spring where they will have to go to a field at the park. I have went the chain of command to the principal, to Mr. Guinan, who have both told me that they feel that this is a concern and to bring it to the Board of Education. So I am formally requesting for the third time that the Board of Education have an open discussion about the challenges of academic support and teachers and students leaving the school district. Thank you.
All right, anybody else for public input?
Can I ask you a question? Teachers leaving or students leaving?
Ryan? So we don't address the public
okay.
during,
I'm sorry.
no. So
Okay.
if you have a question, you can ask me, but we don't have the board members address the public directly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, not first reading. Sure. Anybody else for public input one? All right. So we'll move on to President's comments, and I would just like to respond to Ms. Kroll's request. Just so for your information, we have been working on that internally. We're hoping to have that on the agenda for the next meeting, which is March 11th. But right now, we're gathering data, and there will be a board discussion. It just hasn't happened as of yet, and we thank you for your patience.
Can I make a request that it is at the next meeting, because spring sports starts either I think it's the second week in March, and I know games get played in March, so we can't wait to the meeting after that, because otherwise it will continue to linger without getting addressed.
At this time, I'd like to move into the superintendent's report.
Okay. If you'll switch over, this is presentation by our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Who have been a subcommittee and have made the request to be, and I think we have members here tonight too as well, right?
We do have a few members here tonight that have joined me. Thank you for that. I appreciate the support. So this presentation is something that we have shown to the board before, but there are new members. So we wanted to revisit what was already shown to the board and just kind of update you on what's happened since then. The first was the slide on knowing our why. It's a few minutes long that I'd like to share.
This is called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what. The key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So break time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, once you give me the version, is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick. If you know which version I'm talking about, just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing
first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
Okay. So it would be nice if we could show that at the start of each and every one of our meetings, because that's kind of what we come into every time we meet. We really have thoughtful, genuine conversations. And the start of us forming a committee and looking at our why is this list that we created. So our why as a committee is to help serve ENL students, English as a new language, students, special needs population, those with fragile housing, immigrants, LGBTQ community. So we really want to be representative of more than just a single population, but the population as a mass in our school. So this is our why. We thought of forming partnerships with existing organizations in the community. We felt we didn't really need to reinvent the wheel, especially when there are so many organizations that are already doing things really well. We thought it would be important to partner up with those that are well established and well respected in our community, such as this list that's here. And we have had guest speakers come from these various organizations. Anti-Bias Task Force is one that's still in the making. That's an organization that's been on the East End for probably about 20 years now. And Sag Harbor Community Food Pantry, looking to serve those that have needs in terms of food, getting groceries to them, even if it's after hours. We're trying to make that arrangement so that it's not the typical, 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. It could be available hopefully in the evening. So we're trying to work that out now. Our Diversity and Inclusion Committee last year sought to obtain a guest speaker for Superintendent's Conference Day, and that was Dr. Cheryl Petty. She launched our opening day, October, our second Superintendent's Conference Day, and that was attended by everyone district-wide, so it wasn't just teachers, it was administrators, it was custodians, transportation department, they were all in attendance. She offered suggestions and a breakout workshop to also give us advice on how to move forward into our school year and then again years further. We've had some conferences that we've been able to attend. We've also been working at establishing a protocol for email and regular correspondence to be sent in dual language. The menu for Pearson Cafeteria is now in English and Spanish. So those are just a few things that we've been working on. Board of Ed recommendations for our 2018-2019. It would be easier for me to go to the next slide just to kind of show what we're doing now in relation to this. So the recommendations were more training, report cards being sent in English and Spanish, phone messages in English and Spanish. And as a result of this list that was created, we actually formed a subcommittee. And that subcommittee is going to be, the new subcommittees that have formed is a library committee. So we're looking to have our classrooms reflective of our population. So we're getting books in the hands of students that are representative of our diversity in our schools. A committee has formed to research conferences for professional development, and also a collaboration with John Germain Library so that we can have hopefully a film series that will form. And I'll go back one slide. What we envision for Sag Harbor School District so that everyone is equal and included without being identified as needing. Researching the potential speaker, which we had, Dr. Cheryl Petty. And then the ongoing idea of school-wide trainings in place, which again is being researched by forming the subcommittees. And we have submitted our charter, our hope that we become a freestanding committee. We feel that we've grown and we're ready to kind of be set free from nutrition and wellness and and be our own freestanding committee. That's our desire. So we respectfully request to detach and depart from the Wellness Committee and hope that that's voted on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Do you have any students who are regular participants in your committee?
We have one so far. One is a start. I am happy to say that we have 3 new members since we started, but only 1 student so far.
I'm just asking only because I think more than some other committees, that this committee really lends itself to hearing from the student population. And you know, I applaud kind of the diverse perspective you have in looking at the different parts of the population, different pieces of the population that you want to make sure that their needs are being addressed and their concerns are being heard. So, you know, if you can't get a higher participation from students, then perhaps there's a way in which you can systematically be able to get feedback from the student population to understand where there may be some emerging fragile areas or some areas where there could be some additional work that would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if
the
that's surveys or
challenge-
something else, but.
The challenge, from what I understand, having spoken to a few of the students, is the time and them being available for our meetings. So maybe similar to like what's happening here with the board, it could be on a rotating basis where it wouldn't have to be, you know, attending each and every one of our meetings, but maybe having it on a rotating basis. Maybe that's a way that we can have representation more often.
But we are very fortunate to have people that work with the LGBTQ community, that work in the clubs and the activities, and with the fragile populations, because they are fragile, some of these groups of students. So they're representative of them at the committee. And that committee is robust. You know, we're co-chairs of the committee, and that's not true, because Betty does all the work, and I just try and support her as best as possible. She really is the chair of the committee. I show up for it, but and they've done a tremendous amount of work of crafting their own charter. They put a lot of work into the charter. So we've done so much work, really, and a lot of they've gone out on their own for trainings. But I can tell you from the national level and from the state levels for superintendents, because we're doing a lot of this work at the state level, is one of the first things they say is have the school districts have their own committee with their own charter, because that's how the work's gonna get done. Because they advise the board, and that's the way they can keep it a priority moving forward over the long term. Yeah.
And thank you so much for the work you've done already. It's nice to see a committee get off the ground so quickly and be so effective.
Yeah, we're pretty excited.
We've seen impact right away, which is fun.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I don't know if I could ask if any of the committee members want to share or not.
Well, the only thing that I would add is that now that we have started forming subcommittees, that would be an ideal way to involve students.
That's great.
Sometimes by attending meetings directly, and other times by just advising us. So we really look forward to that.
Just to contribute and follow up with what Bobby just said, Chris, your comment was on point, because as we were sitting here, Bobby was just saying that, you know, her idea was to move on to now try to have outreach for the children, the students, and see how we can get them more involved. So we're getting there. You know, we're just trying to get the adults in order, and then we can reach out to the children. But I think that's a super important point. And, you know, Bobby, you know, she spearheads a lot of the great ideas, and I've been very fortunate to have her involved. And she did say that, and I want to give her credit for that.
Terrific. Thank you so much. All right, at this time, we'll move on to the commuter train survey update.
Do you want to do this together? Come on.
Sure.
So I'm going to, I need my book.
Members of the board, how are you? Tom Scavone. I'm a member of your Educational Facilities Planning Committee, as well as a Southampton Town Councilman. And I'm here as a councilman with this.
And a former Board of Education.
And a former Board of
And a parent.
Education member.
Got a list there going. So we took a couple of your slides. Could you get us started? Because we do have a new board member, and bring them up to date, and then I'm going to share little bits of our
Okay.
survey.
Certainly. This is something, the South Fork Commuter Connection is something that started actually in last year's legislative session. that really came to fruition when our Assemblyman Fred Thiel and our Senator Ken LaValle managed to get the MTA to add 2 new trains, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And I think we've gone through this. Actually, it was an idea that was hatched about 10 years earlier, and now it's coming to fruition. I'm a councilman, and the town's positions and the town's duties on this is to provide bus service, the last mile bus service from Bridgehampton, from Southampton, East Hampton, Amagansett, and Montauk. And there is state monies available that are being used by East Hampton and Southampton towns to provide last mile service, that's it, excuse me. So it really is I like to think of it as shared services between the state, the towns. We would love for the school districts to get on board. And I know that this district is committed to shared services, almost $500,000 worth, so well done there.
Thank you.
Saving money for both districts. Okay, this is gonna start on March 4th, and so people who live west, they can go to either Spionk, West Hampton, Hampton Bays, get on the train and come out east. They can get off at Southampton, Bridgehampton, East Hampton, Amagansett, or Montauk for the price of $4.25 each way. That cost also covers a bus trip from the train station to either, well, depending on where you are, we have 52 different stops. But for the purposes of Sag Harbor, if you get off at Bridgehampton, the bus will take you to the Bridgehampton High School or Sag Harbor schools, Sag Harbor Main Street, and then the later one will take you to the Rite Aid Shopping, King Collins Shopping Center over there. And that kind of is our best guess right now. I don't want to call it a guess. You are one of the major employers of this area, and we think that this is a way to keep good quality educators in this district who might live west and might want to move their districts as they maybe get an opportunity closer to their home. But as this experiment, if you will, progresses, we're probably going to be changing our bus routes and maybe adding some bus routes. We're very happy that the governor put into his budget another $500,000 for the last mile transportation for East Hampton and Southampton. So that is a good sign. I know that we have a $2.3 billion hole in our budget now, so but we're still confident that that money will be kept in there. So I'm here to answer any questions. I provided to the board the updated schedules and kind of a printout of our bus loop as we planned it out.
And I have just an update. Our TASH, our teachers union, was good enough to provide a survey. We had low participation, but that sometimes happens. They did put it out multiple times, so I just want to share that. The board members have that in front of them. But they had, do you work at Pearson? Do you work at Shees, or do you work in both buildings? And again, we only had 37, we only had just less than under 40 participate. We did send it multiple times, but people do get busy, but this is our first showing. I've been saying to our staff very clearly, and I want to visit our faculty meetings to let them know that every journey begins with a single step. They're not going to be able to accommodate every municipality, every one of our school buildings necessarily times initially, but I think the plan is to expand this as we go along, as we see more ridership. So, you know, again, every journey starts with a single step, so we are seeing that the results of this is I completed the survey for Southampton, and we saw that 30 of them did complete the survey. Again, very low, but I have promised to bring these results to you, and as we encourage more staff members to take it. I will likely take the train shuttle. We only had 6 that said yes. I will likely take the train shuttle, but not every day 4. So we only see 10 of our members that have responded to the survey. I'm sorry we didn't get higher participation rate for you.
Well, this is how it begins. And
That's right.
I mean, it's February, It's gonna start in March. We have no, or not much traffic in the morning. People love their cars, so I'm really not surprised at this. And this is something that has to
Yeah.
get going, and people need to get used to it.
And
if they
I,
want.
and again, the only way we're ever gonna get on board is by getting on board. So, but people are gonna have to test this out, they're gonna feel if it works. So you see, journey with a single step,
I like
we only
it.
get on board by getting on board, so that's what we're gonna talk to our faculty and our staff members about. And then, this is that I work at Cheese and I will not take, I work at Pearson and I will not take, and then I will take the train shuttle for reasons not related. So,
Will
and
you
then
back
there's-
up? The-
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Too quick on that slide.
Yep, sure.
This is a service that is also going to run in the summertime as well. Little public service announcement. So if you want to go out to Montauk, or, you know, you can do that for $4.
I mean, the encouraging thing is that we did hear from some of the staff members about this, that sent emails to the board, and with the handful we got, everyone was very supportive of the idea, really supportive. Several kind of implored, can we do a different schedule, because it doesn't work for me. So, you know, I think that in the numbers of those that says it doesn't work for me, if the schedule eventually can be modified, then I think the participation could be much, much higher.
Yes, and that's what we're hearing, yeah. But I think that the town has to see people getting on board the train. They have to prove that the numbers are out there in some way. Because with only one train out and one train in, yeah, they're not gonna be able to take care of everyone. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
So-
And I mentioned here that the long view is to put in a couple more sidings so that they can add perhaps another train. And
So this is powerful, our working with them on this, because we know we're losing teachers and staff because of the long, and you can't afford to own a house out here. You do have to drive that long distance, so I, as superintendent, want to do everything I can to cooperate, to try and, you know, have our folks start using it, so that we can improve the utilization, so that then we can, you know, hopefully create more times.
Just the question was just, I think it's great for the community and the district. Is there anything you would suggest more that we could do as a school district to make it
Sure,
successful?
and this would be to all the school districts or any employer, you don't have to take the bus. If, this last mile bus, if you are an employer, you can send a van or your trucks or, you know, other modes of transportation to the train to pick people up. And I know our afternoon shuttle it's tight with your schedule. It was the best we could do. We're stopping at Bridgehampton as well. It works, but it's tight. But if somebody or some district, for example, was to take their own transportation to the train station, that would really be fantastic.
I asked this when someone was here, and there's probably some reason why we can't, but I know, like, when I used to work for the federal government, they would have this program where they would create economic incentives for people to use public transportation. Like, is there any way we could do something like that, like give out free tickets or something the first month? It just seems like there's a big economic incentive for us in the long term for this to be successful. Is there any way that we can do something like that? I'm asking.
I know that you
Yeah.
can do similar to a flex schedule spend, right, where you can take pre-tax
Yeah.
money and hold it in reserve for transportation.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the district can. I would defer to the attorneys.
We do have,
Education
we've
law.
got flex for like childcare and things like that. And I know our head of buses has contacted New York State Department of Education, Transportation, and there are some allowances we're using the district for transport. I think it's got paperwork involved, but there
In
is.
Southampton Town, we're changing some of our schedules for some of our employees for this.
Yeah.
It's harder for a school district to do that, of course. But, you know, we can't give away money, but as municipalities, as we all know, but this wouldn't be giving away money, and it is for certainly compelling governmental interest and for public good to use public transportation. I like it. I don't have a great answer.
Yeah.
So, okay, it's a start, right?
Have you seen the survey results? I know the surveys went out to a lot of businesses. At my company, we were emailed the survey to take. Have those results come back yet? I was curious just how
They're
they.
being tabulated.
All right,
right
so
now,
it's
I
a
don't
little
have
premature.
those. For me, March 4th, I'm going to be at one of these train stations, and I'm going to be looking at how many people are on the train, and, you know, I think the proof is in the train, or the pudding, or whatever. So, you know, we shall see. And, you know, we have buses, we're chartering a Hampton Jitney bus. We've chosen local bus services, and our bus holds 50 people. You know, so, and we are going to be calling another bus if needed. I hope we have that situation. That's a good problem, I think. You know, so we'll see.
Yeah, I know the town did this back in '06, '07, and it seemed to work pretty well.
So we have some data, right? When we were working on County Road 39.
I rode that bus when they were widening 39 up toward town.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
How was it?
It was fine. It was easier than sitting in traffic.
18 minutes from Hampton Bays to Bridgehampton.
Oh, my dad got to work every day, rode the
Thank you,
train.
Tommy.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a shameless plug for our Pearson Team 28 robotics team, but everything having to do with computer science has exploded over the last 5 years. And our Team 28 is, as you know, earned that grant, and they're going up to RIT to compete, and then they're going to be at Hofstra. And one of the things that they have not been able to do is complete a video. So they have to do an educational video to be really in the top edge of competition. So this is a shameless plug, and here we go.
Welcome to beautiful Sag
This is
Harbor,
their
New York,
educational
home of Team
video.
28, Pearson Robotics Whalers.
Hi, I'm Bellatrix.
And I'm Capella.
And we'd like to introduce you
To several important concepts
About
Team
Team
28, the beast from the east.
There are many innovative and creative ways Pearson spreads the first message while boosting our team spirit. We've created new programs for kids in our elementary and middle schools.
These include Shadowbots, Elementary Robotics, Middle School Robotics, Coding Club, Girls Who Code, and even Cyber Patriots. We're quite the role models for the young techies in our district.
Not only that, but our fashion club is designing a mascot for the team, which is helping boost our team spirit, putting that artsy A right in the middle of STEM. Go STEAM!
A creative way we showcase our robot is on Spirit Night, when we demonstrate its floor sweeping abilities to the crowd at halftime.
Shoot for the stars! Another new goal this year is to promote our program by giving full tours during the school day of the Team 28 build area. These include the robotics room, woodshop, and new computer lab.
Our school has invested in 2 new 3D printers that inspire us to be creative and make new designs.
Robotics is a blast! We have reached out to the students who are new to our school and our country, encouraging them to participate in our robotics program and make new friends.
Including others isn't rocket science. We've been published in our local newspaper and have advertised on WLNG, our local radio station. We've even traveled to San Jose, Costa Rica to teach kids about LEGO Mindstorms.
We are definitely not a heliocentric team. We update our social media pages daily to keep people informed about what we are doing and get them involved.
These pages include Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram.
We love it when you comment on our posts. Pearson is located in a very small town way out on the eastern end of Long Island, far, far away from most big-name tech companies.
This makes it very hard for us to find corporate sponsors. We are a white dwarf amongst
red giants. We rely on the support of our local community businesses and have done a phenomenal job with what we have.
Shippershore Marina has been a very generous sponsor. They have not only donated cash money, but have acted as coaches, mentors, and trainers.
Many of our sponsors have attended our competitions, and we have invited them to our annual potluck dinner to say thank you and to celebrate and showcase our robot. It's real small town kind of stuff.
Finding sponsors each year is like an annual journey to Mars. It's a rigorous process that highlights our determination and perseverance.
We are very serious. Thanks for watching. Bye.
So I go to the competition every year, and it just kills me. It's so hard for me to watch that we don't have, these great big schools have actually whole classes and studios and can produce their movies. And so I was just so excited to see that. And I have to have them fix part of that because we had a parent purchase our 3D printers at the elementary school. So last year, one of our parents purchased the free 2 3D printers. Did you want to steal them? The last item I have is just discussion of the school calendar for next year, the 2019-2020 school calendar. This is a little late. We normally get the draft from BOCES. And why do we care about the BOCES calendar? Is because we have career and technical education classes our students participate in. We also have students that are in our special education classes at BOCES. So we want to try and be as uniform with them as possible. So we received it, I think it was January 26th, and we had been working on it. This is a very unusual year next year because we have 2 weeks in the December-January break that students will have off. So again, I would like to get this approved if we can now rather than at the March meeting, which is why I had asked you to look carefully at this. We did have a question about why we were having the conference day on a Jewish holiday. I did that purposefully so that our parents and children of the Jewish faith would have a conference day. They wouldn't have to attend school. I was asked about staff members. Staff members can always take a personal day for any holiday that, if they're observing a religious holiday, they just take each one of their personal days. But this was so that our families who might be observing the Jewish holiday could have off that day because they don't have to attend school on a superintendent's conference day. So I thought that would help our 950 children and their families, and then our staff members can decide if they want to attend the superintendent's conference day. And generally, on superintendent's conference days, we videotape what we're doing. We have a lot of support materials, so if they're going to take a personal day that day to observe the religious holiday, that work can be made up, and they get 3 of those. So that was very purposely minded that we did that. Again, so it's 2 weeks in December that we have off, and people like to start making those vacations now. I want to also encourage, if anyone's watching this on video, don't start making vacations for the unused snow days because we are predicted to have snow in March. So I think we're going to be using those days. We've built into this calendar 3 snow days, and the weather has been spirited of the last few years, so I expect that we will use those. And how those are used are at the bottom of the calendar for our families to refer to. Any questions?
Has Cash had a chance to look at this and get their feedback?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I do have a concern about the Superintendent's Day. I can appreciate having it off for families. I know BOCES has that day off. So they've already made the decision that they're not going to be open for that Jewish holiday. I just feel that it could send a disrespectful message to say as if you're staff and of Jewish faith. I am not, but I understand it's one of the holiest of days in that faith, that to create a superintendent's conference day on a day where you know that people of that faith on that staff will have to decide whether they participate or not, and coming in and participating is very different than watching the videos. So I'm uncomfortable supporting having a superintendent's conference day on a very holy day in that faith.
I believe we actually had school that day this year, and we have had it in the past on that day.
I'm just saying BOCES is closed in honor of that, and
I'm not looking at the BOCES calendar, but we are contracted very specific. We cannot start school before Labor Day because we honor our families that have to rent their homes to make ends meet. So we run a very tight school year, and our contract says we have to get to 181 days. So I don't know what the BOCES contract is with their teachers, but we have to get to 181 days contractually. So they may have to only reach 180 days. I'm not sure what their contract reads. So
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Is there another I mean, I think that's normally a day off. There's not another option for the...
Well, yes, we could have to come in the day before Thanksgiving, but because we are so far out on the east end of Long Island culturally, we've sometimes done a half day on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, But again, we are a remote school district, and many of our families have to travel on that day to see their families. So that's why we give that Wednesday off.
Was the 30th taken into consideration? I know that, and again, I am not of the Jewish faith either, but I know that Jordana had mentioned that,
She meant the second day, like maybe it would be.
like, I
October
think the
1st.
30th and the 1st are both Rosh Hashanah, and I think to her, it seemed to make a difference which day was, I don't know, I shouldn't speak to it because I don't know anything about it.
Is that
Can you-
another option, like October 1st?
Is there one day of those two that are more important
Out of
to
those
be
Yeah,
off?
three.
the first day would be more,
Important.
yeah.
What day is that?
So I think,
Well,
as
so
a
you have
Jewish board
September-
member, I think if you were gonna have it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, I think that if
That
I was
would
a
be
Jewish
October
staff
1st,
member who wanted to go to the conference.
Instead of the middle of the week?
That would be a better option.
Yeah, that would be a better option, October 1st instead of October 9th.
So switch, make October 1st is the school closing.
For Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
So let's table this. Maybe you should take it back to Tash and just let them know what the board's thinking. And see if they have a preference, whether
You
the
wanna get
superintendent's
this done
conference is on
tonight?
the 1st or the 9th.
Families start like to make plans.
Yeah.
Because they have people far away. But, we can table it.
But I think the rest of the dates are out there, and I think the only ones that are in question is those two in
Those two.
October. So
So
we'll
I-
have the draft out there.
I think they can assume, I mean, they're not, in terms of plans, they're probably looking at the week or 2 week breaks,
Right.
and one can assume that's not gonna change.
Is that fair?
That's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay. So you can pull that off, Tori? Thank you. Okay. And we are now up to the high school past events. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'll go over the Pearson past events pretty quickly. I think we may have touched upon this at the last board meeting. There's a Pearson photography exhibition at John Germain, the Hamptons Music Educators Association rehearsals. That took place last week, as well as the field trip to Guildhall as part of Black History Month, and our conversations with administrators meeting was held on the 8th. Upcoming events tomorrow night, high school orientation, which is an overview of, for parents and students about the upcoming 4 years, is held in the library. Recess is next week. The Suffolk County Music Educators Association rehearsals, the 2nd and the 5th, I believe that's being held at Patchogue, Medford. Conversations with administrators, the 8th of March, parent-teacher conferences, the 14th and 15th, and the 28th, the high school jazz band concert. Any questions? Thank you.
I'll be quick.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
So for middle school, we talked about them before, just had a board meeting it seems. 8th grade viewed Schindler's List all together, and then worked on a project with interdisciplinary with Miss Duff and Miss Farrow's class for social studies and ELA. The musical happened, which was amazing. For Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, our kids put a lot of work into it. If you didn't see it, it was amazing, but we'll have pictures to show you. The 8th grade field trip went with the AP government class, the entire 8th grade, to see Vivian's music, and then conversations with administrators. Here are some pictures of the musical. Our cuties looking great. They also performed at morning programs. They stopped by to see me and show me their cool costumes one day. And that's, you see, Rufus all having a temper tantrum, and Violet getting the spotlight taken away from her by her mom. That was that morning program, which was a hit. And then here we are. I have to say they do an amazing job, and even on the costumes are
It was fantastic.
Right.
So good.
And And now here we are today. Our 6th grade went to Mathematical Mysteries at West Hampton Beach. We switched it. I know last time I talked about how we're going to do Stick to Love. Kristen Anderjack, one of our leave replacements, went to high school with the person that started PS I Love You Day, so we're going to collaborate with them and actually bring it back to make it more robust. That's going to be on Friday. Midwinter recess, conversation with administrators, parent-teacher conference, and we're bringing back the Great Read-In Day on the 22nd. Ms. Caulfield and Mr. Terry are spearheading that for the entire middle school, as well as Ms. Farrell. And Mr. Malone, you're up.
Thank you, Ms. Carrier.
Good evening, everybody. Just to touch upon a few of the past events, the last few weeks we had our annual Super Bowl event, and that was fun, and fun for the children, of course. I actually had the honor of announcing the Super Bowl, so I get to play Howard Cosell for a little while. So that's, I'm dating myself with that reference.
6 of us know who that is.
Yeah, you guys, a few people know that. But actually, most importantly, we made a donation to local food pantries. So I think over 250 cans of soup were donated, which was great. This time of year, just as at Pearson, our students are sharing a lot of their artwork, both at the Guildhall and Parish Art Museum. So those exhibits are on display. Last week, our 4th and 5th graders did an amazing job at the science fair. It was a great night. Actually, it was a pretty cool timing of events in the district. There was a big, I believe it was the girls' basketball game. They had their senior night, so many of the elementary kids wanted to attend that, and then they hustled over to the science fair. So it was great. Everybody made it over to the science fair and was talking about the game as well. So that was fun. PTA always does great events for the school. They just held a movie night on Saturday, and I hear that was a great success. Just some pictures. It's actually one of our 4th grade classes did some research related to Black History Month. And this is their display outside their classrooms. And here's some of the art that I referenced. This is what's on display at the Parish Art Museum throughout the month. If you can, this actually, we may have spoken about this at the last board meeting, but we had an opportunity to work with a group from the North Fork that supports solar energy. The 4th graders did an art project kind of symbolizing what would happen if an entire community came together and went solar. And a group on the North Fork actually donated solar cells, solar panels that serve as the base for the little houses that the children created. So this is on display at the parish, and in fact, the president of the firm came down and he helped the children build solar-powered cars. So each 4th grader left with a solar-powered car, and that was very generous of him to give up his time, and it's been a great project for the kids. And this one is pretty amazing. This is, if you've been following, our school collects bottle caps as a way to recycle, and we've been sending the caps to a group in the Midwest, and then they've been actually turning them into benches, which are now, there's a bench here at the elementary school. There's one that's being donated to the park with their new playground. But this artwork was created using bottle caps by a kindergarten class. So they studied an artist, I believe it's a local artist actually, and then created that whale tail coming out of the water using bottle caps. So that's at the parish exhibit, and then eventually it'll make its way back to the school. Here's some shots of the science fair, and a lot of upcoming events. We just touched on our buddy skating trip, which has been going on for a number of years. Our kindergarten students go with their 5th grade buddies to the Buckskill Winter Club, and that'll happen when we get back from winter recess. That Friday, which is March 1st, will be the math fair, and that's an event put on by our PTA. Real great night for families to enjoy mathematics. And then some of our orientation programs are coming up. On the 7th, we have our kindergarten orientation for parents, and later in March, we'll have our pre-K orientation. And then, of course, on March 8th, we have our Wax Museum. This is the 23rd annual Wax Museum. We're looking forward to that. Any questions? or-
Keep up the game.
Huh? I think you're gonna have to be Eric Brella.
Sure. Oh, because he's up on the North
Yeah.
Fork, right? All right, so let's see. Here's some past events from the athletics department. I guess, well, I know Coach Bramoff put together the coaches versus
I think there's a
cancer
picture of
game
that,
and
yeah.
first responders. I guess Spirit Night was already talked about, 'cause
Yeah.
that was a great event. I happened to make my way into that for a little while. And then the big senior nights for both the boys team and the girls team. And then mixed in there a big victory over Bridgehampton on
By 1 point.
by 1 point, buzzer beater, I guess, or near buzzer beater. And then here's some shots, I guess, of Spirit Night. and
That's Coach for
some of the
Cancer,
different
Coaches
events.
for Cancer, where they dress in pink.
Oh, very nice, okay. There you go. What's in the middle there? Is that a relay race, or is that the game?
That's the game.
Okay,
I took those pictures.
all right, nicely done.
And
And what do we have here? Oh, a clip of the girls' team?
Yeah, they got
Yeah, that was
right
fun.
yeah, so Channel 12 News came for the girls, because the girls are undefeated.
The girls are going for the county championship, I believe,
Friday.
next.
On Friday.
This coming Friday?
Right,
is
Center
it?
Reach.
Yeah, up at Center Reach High School, yeah.
Line. Pearson hosting Mattituck, and Pearson's athletic director said, Kev, this game's going to be, quote, off the chain. And Mackenzie Hogue was ready. Nice play there. The Tuckers were up 8 at the break. But Pearson chips away. They get the home court. They want to play well. Less than 3 seconds to go in the quarter. In the third, it's that girl, Katie Nealon, giving their first lead. And in the fourth, they keep it rolling. Cecilia Barranco with the hoop and the arm. Pearson wins the title 38-32. Good for them. They've been trying for the last 7 years to knock off Mattituck, and they've done it twice this year. Way to go, Pearson.
And am I correct? The girls are 17-0. Yeah, I know they've had a great season, so congratulations to the girls basketball team.
And I think Katie's only, like, what, 25 points shy of her 1,000 or something, so
I believe that.
she's
True.
getting really close, which is exciting.
And then here's the upcoming slate, some of the games. I guess the boys, I think the boys came in second tonight.
They lost 56-8.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost a tough one tonight.
It was tough.
The girls play this Friday, and that, I believe, is at Center Reach High School. And then spring sports are right around the corner, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting.
Okay,
Ms. Gray?
yep, thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Good evening. Just want to follow up on some of the safety and security issues that we've been talking about, particularly the last meeting. We're in the process of evaluating the additional security needs, so to that end, we invited our security company, Intralogic, on site this past week. I met with them and walked around both buildings, identified some locations based on some information from some of the administrators where there are dead spots in terms of cameras. We've also discussed with them an updated version of the camera system, so it'll be, apparently there's a more user-friendly version that they've just released, so we're hoping to take a look at that and see if we can get that here for us. And at this point, I'm waiting for a proposal from them for the additional cameras that we were looking at. I'm also in the process of doing a wireless site survey. I have another vendor coming up next week. Your paper might say Aruba, that's the company that manufactures the wireless, but we have a reseller coming out that we've worked with in the past to do a site survey. If you'll recall, last time I mentioned that I'm looking to get additional wireless service on the exterior of the building for safety reasons, because our security guards are supplied with iPads that they can see the cameras. We'd like them to be able to continue to be able to look at the cameras as needed as they're out beyond the interior of the building and out into the fields, and particularly over at the playground at the elementary school as well. And at this point, we have a proposal for the 2A radios and repeaters that is in the process of being reviewed by the East Hampton Town Police to make sure it's in line with what they need and what some of the other districts in the area have. Oh, this is just, I pushed the guys a little bit the other day, my tech guy, they're doing a great job. You can't see it so well in this picture. That's the downstairs cafeteria. This is the new digital menu board that we put in for them. So instead of having a dry erase board where the kids were prone to walking up and wiping their hand on it and erasing it so the kids behind them couldn't see what was there anymore, we had a TV that we were able to put to use again, that we had taken out of a classroom some time ago, and we were able to mount it in that direction, and with the proper software and everything, she can now update the menu on her own, so every day she'll be able to do this. So it has the daily specials as well as the full month. But the other thing we did do, and I noticed you mentioned it earlier, Betty, for example, the daily special is in both English and Spanish, so they'll see them side by side, which will help both students who speak English and students who speak Spanish to be able to associate the words with one another. So that will be up there on a daily basis as well. Phil?
Thanks, Scott. Good evening again. Just want to walk you through, we just posted the bid notices in the local newspapers, which will appear this week for the bond work at the Sag Harbor Learning Center, which includes electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and we absolutely encourage local contractors to come in, pick up a bid packet, or go online and look at it, and submit their proposal to us. We're also well underway in addressing the issues identified in our corrective action plan, which was approved by State Ed and OSC on December 27th, 2018. We've been working closely with our audit committee and the superintendent, our senior auditor, and the business department staff in implementing that plan to address all the outstanding issues with sustainability. Both the management letter and the final corrective action plan are posted on the district's website. I've completed our draft request for proposal to hire an internal auditing firm who would specialize in reviewing our payroll and benefits reporting, who would then render a report recommending best practices. This RFP has just been vetted by our attorney and was sent out to our audit committee, who will then schedule a meeting to review it. And finally, we've already made 3 budget presentations to the board and to the community regarding the structuring of the 2019-2020 budget. The CPI for this budget is assessed at exactly 2% because we're actually at 2.44%. Our state aid estimate was also received, as was our New York State growth factor. Sag Harbor's growth factor is 1.0209%, which is the second highest in Suffolk County. And we are working diligently to keep our newly proposed budget as flat as possible, with several expenses estimated to go up considerably beyond the 2%, such as health insurance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul?
Good evening, everyone. I have a couple pictures of the sidewalk repair that just took place last week at the elementary school. The Pearson window project update. The damaged concrete sidewalks are scheduled for repair over the February break. Window punch list items have been getting repaired. We are submitting a change order to replace one older window that was overlooked over by the boiler room. Pearson roof repair update. The wind-damaged roof on Pearson is scheduled for repairs over the February break, weather permitting. NYSER has approved the work and will pay the roofing company directly at the conclusion of the repair. We are responsible for a $5,000 deductible. Sag Harbor Learning Center new roof installation. The new roof section has been progressing quickly and is on time. Here's a couple pictures of the new roof. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you. All right, consent agenda. Do we need to refresh our pages, Victoria?
That would be good. I've taken it out. So you should have 1 to 15 now.
1 through 15?
1
If
to
there's 16,
15.
we need to refresh?
Yes. So if all the members would refresh.
I still have 16
Still have
after
16.
refresh.
You can just state 1 through 15.
I do a request on one of them. For 9.12, my request is to, and I think I made this request before, that whenever we're voting on a position, that it should include the salary in what we're voting on, versus this one just said at previous salary, but for transparency, we really should state what the salary is.
I'm not seeing the calendar in there, Victoria. Are you sure it's 16?
I took it out already. You should only have 15 items now.
16, but there's no calendar item.
Right.
It says, I have 9.1 to 9.16, but I don't see a calendar item.
There's no 9.4.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you. So they didn't renumber.
Okay, mine did, so I'm at 15.
Got it. Thank you. That makes more sense. All right, so just to the board members, since 9.4 is gone, and you'll see that it skips from 9.3 to 9.5, they will be renumbered when it gets posted to the minutes and everything else. So it's actually going to end up ending on 15. So for the records, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items 9.1 to 9.15?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Yeah.
Reason.
And for item 9.12, do we know what the salary, current salary is?
No, we do not. We don't have that from payroll, because that request came through too late.
Yeah. No, I just didn't know, I mean, if it's in a current employee, I didn't know if we had something that we had access to that. When can I make a request, can the minutes be amended to include that salary? So that it's
Absolutely.
public?
Can I get that sounds like a motion?
I make a motion that the minutes be amended to include the salary for this employment. This
Can I get a
employment.
second on the motion on the floor?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Which one are you referring to?
9.12, when we appoint someone to a position, we should include the
Oh,
salary.
9.2.
9.12.
9.12. And here we just said at current salary, we didn't list the number, so I'm just requesting that when it gets posted publicly, that include that.
Any other discussion on the floor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Susan, did you vote?
When are you supposed to vote?
Just on the motion that was on the floor
Yes.
just now? Okay.
Oh, aye, sorry.
Sorry, I just didn't see your vote. Unanimous, before. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve action item 10.1?
Wait a minute, so we have to vote on the whole consent agenda. We had a
Oh, we have
motion
to
and a
do that
second,
again?
but
We didn't vote.
I
on the
didn't, I
consent.
have one more I'm waiting for.
I just voted.
Okay, now it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve action item 10.1?
So moved.
Second.
Any, I guess there's no discussion.
I'm gonna recuse myself on that.
Sounds good. Yeah.
That's fine.
Wait, which one? Okay.
10.1?
Oh, 10.1.
10-1, I'm sorry, who motioned on that?
Chris motioned, Alex second.
Okay.
All those
I'll
in
open it
favor?
up.
We're not voting on this thing?
Yeah, I'm gonna open it up.
Uh,
Should be coming up. Okay, so I have 4 yes and 1 abstain. Brian abstained. I'm gonna close the voting. Okay.
So the next thing on the agenda is committee reports.
Before we do that, can I ask a question of something we voted on?
Sure.
With the middle school boys volleyball, we had middle school volleyball for boys last year, didn't we? Since there's, I think we heard from last year there was a strong interest, is there any plan to have high school volleyball for boys? Because we now have this middle school group that has been interested and been playing. Do we know that, or if we don't know that, I can wait till the athletic director's here the next meeting?
I have no idea.
Okay, so I'll table that till the athletic director attends the meeting.
Do we have any committee reports? We did hear from the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Any other updates from committees?
The athletic committee met on, I believe, the 30th of January. The minutes were posted, talked about a few things. The end of the year celebration or award ceremony took up a big part. I don't think we've scheduled the next meeting yet.
Okay, any other committee reports, updates?
Facilities Committee met tonight, and we're progressing, looking at building condition survey and bringing back the architectural firm that we're working with for some recommendations for next year.
Any other committees reporting? Okay. So the charter is down here on our agenda under committee reports. Can I get a motion to approve the diversity and inclusion charter?
So
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just looking for it. Oh, it's up under superintendent's report. That's the presentation. Where's the charter? I'd read it beforehand. I was looking for it.
I think it is. I think it is under superintendent.
Right,
I think they're in the right
that's where it
place.
is, right? All right.
Any discussion on the floor?
I want to thank the committee. I think they've been very active, obviously, and there just seems to be a high level of commitment, which is fabulous. And I completely support the idea of having a separate committee. I do think that it is not the same thing as the wellness committee. It is a part of wellness, but it also goes beyond some of the scope of wellness. And that if standing in its own committee, it will kind of give it a broader, freer range to continue to grow and have a bigger impact. So thank you for teaming this up. I think it's a great idea.
Any other discussion on the floor? All right, all those in favor?
That's unanimous.
It's good for the district.
Public input 2. Any public input?
Hold on, you skipped over unfinished business or potential items not scheduled.
Sorry.
Oh, potential items not scheduled.
I'm going to request that at the next board meeting, we get an update on the parking at the Sag Harbor Learning Center. That was an issue that was brought up before the actual public vote years ago, and we've kind of been bringing it up since, and so you don't have to do it now, but maybe at the next meeting there can be an update on where we stand.
You know where we're thinking, right?
So.
It's with the diocese.
It's the diocese.
So, all right, can I, there was no public input too? All right, can I get a motion to convene to executive session to discuss the employment of a particular person and receive legal advice from the school attorney regarding contracts?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, administrators. Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.